Perfect. It's 7:04. We'll call to order. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'll breeze through this stuff at the beginning because we have no extra attendees. We're meeting over Zoom, obviously. If you want to speak, you raise your hand. If you call in at some point, I'll give you instructions on how to do that.
We have an attendee.
Perfect. That's perfect timing. That'll be under representatives of government officials. Welcome, Nico. Comments from the public on matters not appearing on the agenda will be heard during general public comment. We can't act on those, but we can agendize them for a future meeting. Public comments 1 minute per speaker. If there's anything that prevents the public from observing or hearing the meeting, we'll recess or adjourn. And that's why I just got done checking to make sure that link was operational. If the public is unable to provide public comment, the meeting will be recessed or adjourned. And no one seems to have advertising in their background, so we don't have to disclaim that that's your own personal messaging. So we'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Schlesinger has a flag, and he will rise, and the rest of us, and we can pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So Secretary will call the roll.
Okay, Asher Barandes. Absent. Sean Bayless. Absent. Ellen Evans or B. Cobb?
I'm here.
Okay. Robert Garfield? Mark Goodman? Robin Greenberg?
Here.
Yay. Jamie Hall?
He's here, but
I'm here.
Yeah, I see his name there.
I'm here.
Jamie, are you there? Well,
Yes, I'm
he's
here. I'm here.
Okay,
I'm
good.
just meeting and unmeeting to keep the background
Okay,
noise.
thank you. Christy Holmes?
My link is not opening. It's yours?
Somebody's talking. It doesn't sound like Christy.
Dawn.
Oh, it's
Don't
Don. He's in another meeting.
Christy Holmes? Not here. David Caden?
not here.
Jacqueline Kennedy? Vadim Levatman?
Here.
Yay. Travis Longcar?
Here.
Don Lowe's?
He's here.
Mindy Mann, I know she's not going to be here because she left a message. Eve Marzella, he's not here. I am here. Wendy Morris?
Here.
Patricia Murphy? Not here. Dan Palmer? Not here. Robert Ringler?
I'm here.
Yay. Is it Bobby Kwan for Heather Roy? Is that how this is?
That's
Yes.
correct.
And Heather Roy is not here? Okay.
Yeah, I have to call me. She can't make it today.
Okay, good. So you're here. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Used to seeing you on committees.
Yes.
And you're a valuable participant. Glad to see you here.
Thank you.
Irene Sandler?
Here.
Well, wait a minute. Now I've got Robert Kwan here for Stephanie Savage.
It's okay. Don't worry about that, Savage.
I'm here.
Stephanie's here, actually.
My mistake, sorry.
Stephanie, are you here?
I'm here, but I'm keeping my video off because my internet is not so good.
Okay, but you're here. Okay, that's good. All right. Robert Schlesinger,
Here.
Jason Spradlin, I know he's not here. He sent a letter that he's not gonna be here. Gail Stroloff,
I'm here.
yay.
In the corner.
Okay, Tim Steele,
Here.
Andre,
Yes, here.
yes. Blair Tanner, Kathy Wayne,
Here.
oh, good. Stephen Weinberg,
I'm here.
good. John Wimbush,
I'm here.
good. Stephen Prothro,
Present.
good. All right, let's count this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I have 19 people present and a whole bunch absent.
Okay, well, we have a quorum and we'll
Okay.
resolve that number as we go forward. Next item is approval of the agenda.
I
As
move.
circulated. Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Wayne moves. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Hearing none, the agenda will be adopted. Next item is approval of the minutes circulated as attachment A. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
Thank you. Motion from Ringler,
I'll second.
second from Wayne. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Hearing none, the minutes will be adopted. In the interest, I know there's 2 attendees. I'm going to take Mr. Rodriguez first. It's actually item 7, and then I'll come back to item 6 because I know he has a tight schedule. And let me welcome Nicholas. Actually, I'm going to promote you to a panelist in case you wanted to turn your camera on. Mr. Rodriguez is a representative of Congressmember Liu, and joining us to say a few words tonight. I did ask him ahead of time about an item of interest to many of our stakeholders, which is the issue of air noise, and as a federal issue, what the office is doing about it, but also anything else you'd like to update us with. And in lieu of Janet Turner, who is our usual representative. So welcome.
All right, thanks, Travis, and apologies again. I had some issues with the link for the meeting, so I was slightly late joining. So it's a pleasure to meet all of you. Some of you may remember me from I think past meetings a couple of years back. I'm Nico Rodriguez. I'm Congressman Liu's district director, and I am here pinch hitting for Janet Turner, who's out of the office this week. Wanted to be here, obviously to discuss airplane noise and the Santa Monica Mountains. But before I get into that very briefly, obviously you all saw the news that the president did sign into law the major infrastructure package. It's $1 trillion of investment in infrastructure funding that I just wanted to highlight. It's going to mean upwards of $25 billion for California highways, about $4.2 billion for bridge replacements, $9.5 billion for public transportation, a minimum of about $100 million to expand broadband, and $125 million to provide protection from wildfires, which all of you living in foothill communities obviously know that is a key issue. Additionally, the package also includes about $6.5 billion for affordable housing. So certainly a good first step. We obviously have a lot of needs on infrastructure, and that's a first piece of legislation that we want to get done, or that we've gotten done. Obviously, we're trying to move forward on the Build Back Better project, which will also be a major investment in infrastructure, as well as addressing the environment and global climate change. And we're hopeful that we're going to have a vote on that in the House, hopefully in the next week or so, and hopefully action in the Senate. So stay tuned. Janet and I will keep you updated on that. As well, some of you are not too far away from the West LA VA. Just to give you a progress report on the West LA VA briefly before I get into airplane noise. As some of you may be aware, there is construction going on right now at the West LA VA to build 3 buildings that are already currently under construction and will be completed by the third quarter or fourth quarter next year to house about 150 veterans or their family members. This is an important step, an early phase of the redevelopment of the West LA VA to be a community for veterans, not only housing, but wraparound services in a town center. And we're pleased to see that progress. We also saw some great investment by the governor recently, dedicating some state budget dollars towards some of the additional buildings that are going to be prepped soon. There's already work being done right now on MacArthur Field, which is adjacent to the 3 buildings currently under construction, to prepare those areas for some buildings, some housing. And the principal developer team, the West LA Veteran Collaborative, should be getting control of a couple of buildings on campus. That, along with the commitment of the secretary at the urging of Congressman Liu, to provide some housing for veterans that were living on an encampment adjacent to the VA on San Vicente. All of those veterans, almost all of those veterans, have been housed either on the VA campus through what's called the Community Treatment and Rehabilitative Services Program, which is on campus, or through a couple of different locations. One is a grant per diem permanent supportive housing program, and also Project Room Key Rooms. Obviously, it's a temporary step. We want to get all of these veterans housed in permanent supportive housing or independent apartments. But as you all know, sometimes that's a process. We're working with the VA team weekly, if not daily, to make sure that those veterans are placed in the best possible housing. And the secretary has committed to additionally get 500 veterans housed in LA that are currently homeless before the end of the year. So big priority, a lot of big work ahead, but we're seeing some really positive progress there. We're continuing to work on that. All of this, or much of this, is made possible by the congressman's legislation, the West LA Leasing Act, which allowed the VA to enter into agreements with third parties to build housing and operate housing on the VA campus, which they were not allowed to do in the past, as well as other legislation like the West LA Improvement Act, which allows the VA to capture money that it gets from easements like the Metro Purple Line terminus, to make sure that that money doesn't go to the Treasury, but stays on the campus and serves veterans at the VA. So a lot more to go. Janet will certainly update you. I'll leave it at there. Obviously, on airplane noise, we got some discouraging news recently at the end of October with the city's lawsuit against the FAA to revert back to the old flight paths, both out of Van Nuys and Hollywood Burbank Airport, which we were all pushing heavily for until we can get some long-term solutions to try to ease noise and to try to bring some semblance of peace for residents in the Santa Monica Mountains, as well as the folks in the Valley as well. And that wasn't successful, but more work is going to continue. As you all remember from the South San Fernando Valley Task Force, which I represented our office as a sort of ex officio member, along with all our other congressional offices. We worked with the official voting members of that committee on recommendations. 4 of those we certainly have updates on. So as you know, the FAA has been less than positive towards the recommendations of the task force for easing airplane noise. However, there are 4 that certainly deal with congressional action. The first of which was recommendation 9, which was to restrict aircraft from operating during night at both Hollywood Burbank Airport and Van Nuys, and to penalize and identify publicly aircraft operators that violate a mandatory curfew. Well, the VA has begged off on a curfew We're moving forward on trying to re-implement trying to implement curfews to lower overnight noise between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. I know that Congressman Sherman's reintroduced the REST Act, which authorizes an airport to voluntarily impose an access restriction between those hours for aircraft and permit penalties for curfew violations. And then obviously Congressman Schiff and Congressman Sherman had worked on legislation last year, the Valley-Wide Noise Relief Act, which was introduced as an amendment to FAA funding legislation to allow a nighttime curfew at Burbank and Van Nuys airports. While the VA is, or sorry, not the VA, but the FAA has pushed back on that. We are continuing to work with the Congress members in the San Fernando Valley on curfew legislation. It is something we are discussing within the Clyde Skies Caucus. Another recommendation was recommendation 12, which required congressional action to increase the eligibility area for noise mitigation programs in communities near airports, which requires federal funding to implement. Obviously, in the most recent FAA reauthorization, Congress mandated that the FAA submit a report on its metrics on noise evaluation. The FAA did send a report to Congress. We found it to be inadequate, lacking a comprehensive evaluation of alternative noise metrics and diminishing, the importance of noise metrics. We had sent a letter that Congresswoman Karen Bass had led to the FAA, basically saying as much, that the report was inadequate. And we all joined that letter. We still have yet to receive a response from the FAA, but are pushing the FAA for that. Separately, before I go into the next recommendation, we also sent a letter to the president when he was still the president-elect, asking that the FAA administrator address airplane noise issues in the LA area. On recommendation 13, which was from the task force, which was to require the use of an environmental analysis as the minimum standard for to meet the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act for implementing any FAA proposed changes to aircraft flight procedures. The FAA again pushed back on that. We in 2019 wrote to the Government Accountability Office along with the chair of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, Pete DeVazio from Oregon, to ask for independent review of how the FAA measures aircraft noise, because we know that residents have talked about the fact that the FAA doesn't really take into account the noise issues that residents talk about. The request highlighted, the FAA's findings that new routes in Southern California would not significantly affect the quality of human environment in the impacted metro areas, which seemed to contradict pretty much everything we were hearing over the year-plus period we were working on the task force. We, I believe, just got that study. Unfortunately, I'm not able to share the information immediately because I'm still waiting a copy of that report. I'm going to try to get that to folks so that we can share that and people can get a fuller understanding of what the Government Accountability Office found. But we're going to continue to, to share the results with airports and with those affected communities. So that should be forthcoming from me and Janet. Hopefully within the next month, I will try to get that to you all. The last recommendation that required congressional action from the task force letter was to require the FAA to immediately respond to community and airport requests and provide past implementation results from next-gen aircraft procedures, including the implementation of the Southern California Metroplex and future implementation and supporting documents. We had written, or I should say Congressman Schiff and Sherman had written to the FAA supporting local requests for information regarding noise issues, as well as to request that both Hollywood Burbank and Van Nuys that FAA considered dispersing departure routes as required under Section 175 of the most frequent FAA reauthorization. We're continuing to push. I know that Congressman Sherman co-sponsored, I believe, the Apprise Act, which would require the FAA to ensure that aviation roundtable technical representatives can participate in the implementation process of what they call next gen. And, obviously we've got a lot of pieces of legislation we may need to move forward, certainly some from the previous Congress to try to address some of the issues and some of the recommendations from the task force next year. I know that the Quiet Skies Caucus about a week or two ago did meet with the FAA and did get a report from them. So some of this work is ongoing, but we're aware between Benedict Hills, Bel Air, Beverly Crest, and even now we're starting to hear a bit more from Calabasas about airplane noise. And we know this is an issue that's affecting folks' lives daily, if not hourly. And we're trying to see what we can do to address them at the congressional level. Quite a bit of work ahead. That gives you at least some update in terms of the thinking of the congressional offices that were on the task force, as well as some that are just in the LA Metroplex area, about what we're going to try to do to address those congressional recommendations from the task force. So I just want to keep you all apprised of that. More work ahead. Some more information I should share shortly on that GAO report.
Thank you for that update. I see we have a hand up. If you can take a few questions before you have to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Ms. Minor, I imagine. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, I understand you said that part of the package for the infrastructure was expanding broadband. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I don't know the exact allotment of where that money is going to be expanded. A lot of it is going to be focused probably on rural as well as some urban infrastructure to build out broadband. One thing that really came out of the pandemic, we were already aware of it, but out of the pandemic was particularly for students that were dependent on a Wi-Fi signal and may have a computer at home or may not. Internet connection was a critical barrier for a lot of kids who were trying to go through distance learning. And so one thing we've already tried to do was to try to invest more money on nationwide broadband so that we can have better internet connections in both rural and urban areas, to get more families connected to the internet, as it's becoming a more critical part of our national infrastructure, business, education. The need is there for us to stay competitive. So I'll try to get maybe a more detailed breakdown of where that broadband investment is, but certainly it's at least $100 million that will be invested there, but much more obviously is needed. Because there were too often, especially in urban centers or in rural areas, students that potentially, if they couldn't go to school, would potentially have to go either to a library like an LA County library, which is fine, or outside of a McDonald's or a Starbucks, wherever you could get an internet, a Wi-Fi signal if you couldn't get that at home. We want to try to make it easier for folks to have internet connections, not just for distance learning, but for other needs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Schlesinger, then Mr. Caden.
Who's going to maintain, the Wi-Fi may be put in by the government, but who's going to maintain the cost of it?
To maintain the cost. So, the way that generally that the investment would occur is, at least my understanding would be the Federal Communications Commission would probably do some of the allotment, and they may do that through construction process or through the government procurement process. The money that would be expended would be finite. It is the amount that is appropriated, in this case, $100 million. It would be, I need to check to see what agency would be involved in specifically building this out, but I'm not sure that it's delegated towards the various states to do this building. it's very well likely that it's the Federal Communications Commission that's going to be doing that building. And then obviously, in terms of analysis on any level of spending, the Office of Management and Budget is the government's office to manage the audit of government expenditures, as well as the Government Accountability Office, which I mentioned on FAA stuff. They'll be responsible for auditing expenditures to see what it's expended on, not only just the amount, but where is it going and what's being billed.
So in other words, the government's going to maintain it, is what you're saying?
Very likely, yes, but I don't want to put that as a definite. But yeah, very likely, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Caden, then Ms. Morris.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Does any of that impact those of us who live in the canyon areas where our Wi-Fi internet is very sketchy, in which we really need it for emergency and as well as telephone? Many of us have internet, cellular telephone access as well. Thank you.
Yeah, let me find out about that. I'm not exactly sure, Mr. Caden, about where it is. My guess is yes, because generally speaking, you want to find areas that have limited connection with first responders, especially areas where they're prone to some potentially some disaster, whether that's areas in heavy flood zones, 100-year or 500-year floodplains, or areas that are prone to hurricanes, tornadoes, in this case, wildfires potentially, since we've had wildfires both on the east side of the 405 and the west side of the 405 pretty regularly over the years. I will try to find that out, but my guess is yes.
Thank you.
Morris.
Yeah.
Hi, Nico.
Hey,
Hi.
Wendy.
So thanks for everything that Ted's working on. He's really impacting a lot of things. So thank you and thank him.
No, sure.
Specifically to the air noise problems, one thing is they don't even have noise sensors up in the mountains. Not only are they not recording things that don't make sense, they're not recording anything. So that's something that might help. And then my big question to you is, your summary was appropriately grim. And there's a lot of work to be done, which means a lot of time. How do we get something to make life livable before we're dead?
I think you put that pretty directly, Wendy, as you should, because of the situation here. Really, I think it's us working in the Quiet Skies Caucus, but also you all speaking as well with your Senate offices to make sure that they're aware of the needs. Now, we're pretty aware. I'm sure that Senator Feinstein, Senator Padilla's offices are pretty aware of some of the airplane noise issues, since, at least Senator Feinstein's office was on the task force as an ex officio member, but making sure that they're aware. The key thing I think for us is, I think it's about a year or so away from an FAA reauthorization, but we need to do everything we can to build momentum for either amendments in the next reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Act to try to get some of these things addressed, as well as trying to get more folks to sponsor this legislation that I mentioned, whether they're addressing the four recommendations, I should say 2 or 3 of them that really have legislative actions involved. So I think talking with us, which you're doing, thankfully, you're one of our key sources of information about the situation that, that folks in Benedict Hills and in the mountains are dealing with. So that's helpful, especially as we in our office have a new staff member in our DC team who's now taken on the transportation and FAA portfolio. So we've gotten him knee deep, Zach Atran, in the long history of issues that we've dealt with in the mountain communities, as well as actually in the South Bay, with LAX and Hawthorne Airport, right, and Santa Monica. So I think continuing to talk, but also, talking with folks that you might know in other congressional districts about these noise issues, and making them aware, because they can contact their members of Congress as well. That's not stopping you from doing that as well. But we're all trying to do that in the, we have a pretty sizable caucus in the Quiet Skies. And so we're touching a lot of folks, but, we always can always use the input from folks talking to other members of Congress.
You know that Burbank has added 5 new airlines in 2021. And Van Nuys never lost volume. It increased stratospherically every year. So when I say that we need something done before we die, I'm not just playing around.
No.
It's getting worse and worse and worse, even after the task force, as if it had never happened, as if we don't exist, as if we have no voice, as if it doesn't matter if we die.
No, I mean, I understand. I had heard the news about Burbank. It doesn't surprise me on Van Nuys, especially as we're starting to get more complaints from Calabasas. And I know I think Congressman Sherman is on the other side of the 101, kind of near Hidden Hills. The key thing for us is trying to get some of these legislative pieces. Thankfully, we do have a new administration and new opportunities for us to tackle this. We are certainly trying to use our voices and potentially try to move, or I should say, definitely try to move legislation towards some action. I mean, it's helpful for us that we have, the chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, who is really open to a lot of these airplane noise issues. But I realize the time is short, not only for us in this Congress with, about a year left to to make legislative action, before that time, as well as every day that you have to deal with. So we're going to keep trying to push there. I will try to keep you updated, from what we hear from the Quiet Skies Caucus, as well as what we hear individually as an office in response to some of the work we're doing. And so we will try to do that.
Yeah.
So let me just
provide any help that I can.
Yeah.
No, appreciate it.
So let me just say here, thank you for your time in coming. And I think the key here is that this is an issue that affects a lot of our constituents who live in this area. And I heard a lot in the statements that you said, the FAA pushed back and the FAA pushed back. Well, Congress has the purse strings and sets the law. The executive branch is there to implement the law. And it's very hard for us as individuals to affect the FAA. It's a very powerful agency, as you know, and it's basically captured by the airline industry and the manufacturers. And we depend on you, Congress, to get them in check. And it's not just us, it's every community around the country, as you know from your caucus, that's really being affected by things that are being done unilaterally essentially by the executive branch, running roughshod over the interests of the people in a way that isn't the way our government's supposed to be set up, frankly.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, we're here to support, but we also, and I'm saying this here in this meeting because I hear a lot about this issue and I hear the planes. Because we can't do it alone. Work in any of the communities out here do it alone. There's an imbalance of power going on between the legislative and the executive branch here, and the agencies in particular, that needs to get remedied with some hardball. And whatever way your office can think of to do that, we'll be here to support, but we can't lead the fight, as you well know.
You're right. You're right. Correct. No, I completely agree. And I think that's certainly reflective in what we're trying to do and the urgency with which, we're trying to push through this, because we realize we get the calls every day. We talk to residents of our district, not only for folks in Benedict Hills and Beverly Crest area and Calabasas, but actually further down from Santa Monica all the way down to the South Bay. And it's an issue of livelihood. I mean, as someone who grew up right over the flight path of both Fresno International Airport and a National Guard base that had F-16s, I totally understand what this noise situation is like, because I was used to fighter jets and Air National Guard cargo planes flying over all the time.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate all your time tonight and for coming and spending it with us to address this issue.
Yeah, no, anytime. It's a pleasure. I'm glad I was able to provide some more information, and we'll keep that conversation going about the work that we're going to try to do on this.
Great, we
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Nico.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Okay, next item, we'll go
Can
back
I
and grab
interrupt you for
public
1
comment.
minute? Can I
Uh,
interrupt you for 1 minute, please? I noticed that David Caden and Dr. Garfield came in. Did anybody else who did not respond to the roll call come in?
Yes, Christy Holmes arrived at 7:25. Robert Garfield arrived at 7:25. David Scott
Yeah.
Keaton arrived at 7:17.
Yeah, I have those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go back to general public comment in case our attendee would like to hit *6. If not, we'll go ahead and move on. I have a written report from Jarrett Thompson under item 7, reports of elected officials. Redistricting will be finalized in December. We'll talk about that later this meeting. Notable news, a new ordinance proposed by Councilmember Koretz and Krikorian sets in place legislation that bans automatically giving out plastic eating utensils unless the customer specifically asks for them. Went into effect on Monday. The city's become now the largest city in the world to have such a law on the books. So if you want your plastic, ask for it. If you can use your own, don't ask for them. They won't come. And he says, as always, board members have any questions or concerns, you can call him 213-505-0798. Next item is item 8, President's report. I have a report quickly from conveyed to me from Minnie Mann, who couldn't make it, about the Sustainability Alliance. She just wanted to let us know there was a discussion about the expansion of the LA Zoo, and they voted to support alternative 1, which doesn't require the removal of trees and damaging existing habitat. They also recommended supporting the motion that we will be discussing tonight regarding the Mulholland Scenic Parkway. And there was a long presentation about alternative gift giving ideas that don't add waste that will be added to the newsletter. So update from the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. The only other thing I want to mention, President's report here, is that we do have the bias training, anti-bias training, that we all are obligated to take by the end of this month. So if you're over the holiday and you have a little free time and you don't want to interact with people, you say, I have to take this training. I'm so sorry. You can put your headphones on, you can listen to the presentations, and it'll give you whatever it is, 67 minutes of respite from whatever conversation you maybe didn't want to be having. Now, I'm sure everyone's going to have a lovely holiday and everything's going to be wonderful. But just in case, you have an excuse if you need to take 67 minutes and do the anti-bias training.
Is there a test on this one, like the ethics?
I think there was some question and answer, but I was able to do just fine. And they ask you to go take the Harvard implicit bias test, which is sort of an interesting thing, but actually you don't actually have to do it to get through the training, just so you know.
Can we take it anytime?
You can take it anytime. You should have a Cornerstone account. You go look for your Cornerstone account.
Yeah. Okay.
And log in. It's the same place as all the other trainings that we do. Mr. Caden.
The recording, Travis?
If I've been married to a first generation woman immigrant from a third world country for 33 years, can I get an exemption?
There are no exemptions. This is required of all employees and board members of the city of Los Angeles. I appreciate the question, though. The next item is item 9, report of Vice President Operations, Robin Greenberg.
We really don't have any meetings at the moment coming up. It's a wonderful holiday season and we should just enjoy it.
Great. Item 10, Vice President Legislative Affairs, Mr. Hall.
We're going to be voting on 2 motions that were adopted or introduced, I guess a couple of weeks ago, that relate to conservation efforts in the Santa Monica Mountain. I won't say more about that right now, but they're just really important motions that were introduced by more than, I guess, like 5 city council members. So that was an important legislative item. Also, the resolution that we adopted regarding SB 9, I shared that resolution in Word format with the planning deputies for CD4 and CD5, with the hope that they might introduce that motion and shepherd it through the city council. And that's all I have to report.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. A report from the secretary, Nikki Miner.
Yeah, I realized I could have not interrupted you, and I could have asked at this point, but I will now ask if there anybody else came in.
I came in, Robert Garfield.
Yes, thank you. I have you down. I have David Caden down, and I have Christy Holmes down. Anybody else come in after roll call? Okay, end of report.
Thank you. Item 12, treasurer, Mr. Levatman.
Yeah, I want to move to approve October expense report.
Thank you. There's a second. We have a second from member Miner, I believe. Is there any
Yes.
discussion? Is there any objection to calling the question? It is a financial matter and requires a roll call vote. Can I try something, Nikki? Can I call and you count? Would that be okay with you? If you
Okay.
tally up as we go? Okay. Evans. This is to approve the monthly
Aye,
expenditure
aye.
report. Aye. Garfield,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Caden,
Yes.
Levatman,
Yes.
Longcore is abstain. Lowe's. Not here. Minor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes,
Prothrow,
Same.
abstain.
Yes.
Thank you. Ringler. That was Stephen Prothrow. He's down at the end of the list.
Yes.
Sandler,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Schlesinger,
Yes.
Stroloff,
Yes.
Steele,
Yes.
Stoica,
Yes.
Wayne,
Yes.
Weinberg,
Yes.
Wimbish,
Yes.
Quan.
Yes.
Did you register my yes, Travis?
We did now.
Thank you.
Nikki, do we have a number?
You went too fast for me, and you went,
Okay.
so I didn't. I got to do both actions, or I'm sorry, I didn't keep up.
Right. I have 21 for and 2 abstentions, but we can count that up again. So the motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the report of the Planning and Land Use Committee. Do you have a general report, Mr. Schlesinger?
Yes, we do. A lot of the subjects that we discussed are on the agenda, so I don't think we need to repeat them at this point. We'll talk about them when they come. The major project is Chrysler Way, and that's Stephanie's area, so I think she's more qualified to talk about it than I am.
Ms. Savage, do you want to give a quick report on Chrysler Way?
There was a hearing yesterday, and a 4-hour hearing, over 4 hours, where there was
Yep.
a lot of public comment. The case file is going to be open for additional 60 days to get in additional comments from neighbors. The board sent a letter that I read, and additional letters were sent from Laurel Canyon Association and comment.
Thank you.
I
And
think
it's
the rest of the items, Travis, are on the agenda.
wonderful. So we'll move to item 14, which is
I
about
just
this. Yes,
just
go
wanna
ahead.
stick in that the zoning administrator said that he would most likely have a response to the Chrysler Way situation in 60 days from yesterday.
Great. Good information. Thank you. So item 14 is the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy as a trustee agency. The motion from the Planning and Land Use Committee is to recommend that the BABCNC board write a letter and submit a community impact statement in support of the resolution, Council File 21-1284, to recognize the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy as a trustee agency under CEQA and recognize the Big Wild Topanga State Park core habitat area linkage maps. Whoever's got
That's
radio
Don.
background. Is that Don?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don, can you mute yourself? Thank you. And to recognize the Big Wild Topanga State Park core habitat area linkage maps. This was an appendix. Mr. Schlesinger, you move this from committee?
I'm sorry. I
Do
wasn't.
you move this from committee?
That's correct.
Great. And so we don't even need a second. We can discuss it. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to this motion?
I'd like to say a few things.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
So I just want to highlight how significant this motion is and what it will do. So first of all, we are super blessed in my mind to have a state agency, the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, that advocates for the conservation of the Santa Monica Mountains. And we've worked really close with them over the years. In fact, I believe they used to have an actual seat on the Air-Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. But the city has not been treating them as they should, giving them the amount of deference, has not been treating them as a trustee agency and consulting with them with regard to development projects. So this recently, the California Attorney General wrote a letter confirming what had always been the case, which is they meet the legal definition of being a trustee agency. It's not that they are, this is not new. This is just an acknowledgement of what has always been the case. And the hope is that the city might actually look at these development projects with a little bit closer eye and take what this Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy says with more, let's see here, they'll give it more credibility and think about it carefully. And then the other thing is the habitat maps that the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy has adopted, and they've been around since 2017. The city has just consistently poo-pooed them and ignored them, and this would direct the city to acknowledge them and use them as they're intended, which is to be a guidepost for determining when there might be habitat considerations that need to be evaluated. So this is great, and I wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you. Is there anybody, I should ask, are there any questions about the motion or what it does?
Can you just repeat the motion?
Sure. The motion is to support, to write a letter and a CIS, Community Impact Statement, in support of the motion in Council File 21-1284, which is already been put forward to recognize the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy as a trustee agency in the CEQA process, the California Environmental Quality Act, and to recognize their habitat planning maps in that process. And so a trustee agency, just to clarify, are ones that hold or protect resources that are in the public trust. So fish and wildlife are things that are public trust resources in California. Nobody owns them, the public as a whole owns them, but certain agencies are responsible for their good stewardship. And in this instance, the resource is the Santa Monica Mountains. And this is just confirming what the interpretation of the law, that the Santa Monica Mountains is a trustee agency for those public trust resources. And in the process of doing environmental review, the city is supposed to give them technically deference, respect their position on impacts to that trust resource. So that's the motion that's been put forward by Councilmember Koretz and the other Hillside council members. And our position, a yes vote, would be to support that motion.
Does it need a second?
It doesn't need one because it came from committee. So it's duly under consideration. Anybody like to speak against it?
No.
No, it's great.
Okay. Is there any objection to calling the question? Is there anyone who would like to record a vote other than yes? Abstentions? Noes? Great. Thank you. So we'll consider that 20, whatever number we're up to.
What
Well,
time?
I've got to back up to number 9, which isn't covered in the isn't covered in the agenda today. So let's finish.
Okay, yeah, 20, I think it's going to be 22, and I'm an abstention as usual. So that motion passes. Mr. Schlesinger, you want to go back to number?
Yes, discussion and possible motion continued from prior PLU meetings regarding lack of continuity between planning reviews and plan check reviews of projects with discretionary approvals. Conditions of approval prescribed by zoning administrators apparently do not become part of the project's documentation and therefore are not enforced by LADBS during construction. Discussion and possible solutions. In the city of Beverly Hills, planners are involved with the plan check process. This was written by Stella Gray.
You know, that's not on our agenda here tonight, though. You may be looking on the commission on a committee.
I was looking at land use because I wanted to make sure everything was covered. Okay,
Right.
you want to take 12 or do you want me to, Travis? It's up to you.
I think we're up to 15 or something. This Mulholland Scenic
No,
Parkway.
12
I
is the
was going to.
specific plan.
You're on the wrong agenda.
That's the wrong agenda. We have an agenda for the
I've got
15. Yeah,
we're
for
on
tonight.
15.
We're on 15. So item
okay.
15 is the Mulholland Scenic Parkway Design Review Board compliance issue. It's a motion from committee to write a letter and CIS in support of resolution in the council file that moves that the planning department report back in 90 days on how the specific plan is in substantial conformance with the intent to management development in environmentally sensitive areas in the absence of design board review for all projects, visible and non-visible, and report back in 90 days with an update on existing and future natural community conservation efforts, such as the wildlife pilot study, the ridgeline protection ordinance, and hillside construction regulations, with recommended strategies to introduce for citywide implementation, and to report back in 90 days for an analysis that identifies parcels of lands that are appropriate for conservation as determined by trustee agencies such as the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, identifies fully protected species as well as candidate sensitive species of special status as determined by state or federal agencies within these parcels, and recommends additional measures required to comprehensively conserve and manage the city's natural biological diversity and encourage compatible and appropriate growth and development within these parcels. So it's a follow-up on our discussion from last month about design review board, but it adds a few extra things.
Yeah.
So Mr. Schlesinger, you'd like to move this from the committee, right?
Yes, I would, but I'd like to make a comment about that.
Please
Travis
do.
wrote an incredible letter, if anybody saw it, or those of you who did see it. I passed it on to Alan Kishbaugh of the Mulholland Design Review Board, who passed it on to Marion Dodge of Hillside Federation. It was an incredible letter. It was extremely well written. It's not the only one. Every major agency in the city, when it comes to wildlife protection and everything else, is vehemently against the Mulholland Design Review Board not reviewing the outer corridor. And the people sitting in the planning department downtown have no intentions of getting in their car and driving out there and seeing what it is. It is a mistake that needs to be corrected. Thank you.
Great. So is there anyone who has questions or wishes to speak on this motion? Is there any objection to unanimous consent?
No.
And hearing no objection to calling the question or unanimous consent, motion carries. I'm an abstention as usual. Next item is item 16, report of the Outreach Committee. Vice President Greenberg.
We've been meeting, the Outreach Committee has been meeting frequently. Sometimes we put the newsletter together in the Outreach Committee. Members of the Outreach Committee are Mindy Mann, Nikki Miner, Robert Schlesinger, Andre Stoika, Heather Roy, Maureen Smith, and Travis Longcourt ex officio, and myself. We have two motions. The first motion is to recommend to the BABC that the board approve the Web Corners upgrade to our website with setup cost of $2,500, one-time setup cost, and a monthly maintenance fee of $199 a month versus the $150 that we're currently paying. I so move.
Thank you. Since it's from the committee. There's no need for a second, so we can proceed directly to discussion. And I see that Ms. Evans has her hand up.
I actually have a number of questions about this. So first of all, we currently have Web Corner, so I'm interested in knowing in what way this website will be different from the website we have already with Web Corner. Are there any examples of new websites that Web Corner has done? What problems would be solved by upgrading the website? And what way would the new website improve communications with stakeholders? And also I would like to know whether any providers other than Web Corner were consulted.
Well, we had the name of the president of Web Corner is Robert Adams, and he's come to 2 different outreach committee meetings, and the members of the committee have had 2 different, he's been on Zoom with us and had 2 different opportunities to talk to him and ask questions of him. And he also is responsible for a multitude of other neighborhood councils in addition to us, and they've all adopted it, and we're the last one of his. He has a couple dozen of his, and we're the last one. So according to him, he would make our work much easier because he would expedite a lot of the processes that we're now doing. He has spent a lot. I've been to his office a couple times. He's been with us a couple times. So he knows that we do need help because we haven't upgraded our system since we've started with Web Corner. And according to him, we've started with Web Corner, I believe, a long time ago, 15 years. Well, he was started with the neighborhood council system 15 years ago. We had a couple of other Web Corner or web substitutes, and then we had him, but we had Adam, I believe. So I think that he's given us written examples of his improvements. We've actually submitted them to this organization a couple of different times as attachments to our agendas. And we've provided ample opportunities to read what he is able to do for us. So I guess you haven't yet read those items, but I think he will help us a lot. I think that he is the one because he does so many different neighborhood councils.
I see Ms. Minor has her hand up.
Yes, I was the one that was very skeptical about this all along. And the gentleman gave us a presentation on the Zoom and answered a lot of questions that we had and explained what would be the advantage for us by the upgrade. And I switched positions from being a skeptic to being in favor of it. I think it's a very good idea. I'm glad that Robin persisted with it. And I think that my opinion personally is that we should go forward with it.
Thank you. Do we have other questions?
Yes.
Ms. Morris, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Robin, if you have spoken with any of the other neighborhood councils who've made the change to
Yes.
see how they liked it.
Yes, he put me in touch with a couple other neighborhood councils. And I talked to this gentleman by the name of Len Schaefer, Tarzana. I don't know. I know Len Schaefer from Bonk. Like when I go down to Bonk, he's there. He's like us, but he's in Tarzana. And he couldn't be happier. He talked to me for a long time about his happiness with the Web Corner upgrade.
Great.
Anyone else want to ask questions? Mr. Levatman.
We had this discussion in the finance committee regarding, consulting any other providers. Were there any other providers considered?
I haven't spoken to any other providers, but if you would like me to speak to some other providers, I'd be more than happy to do that. Is that what you want?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So to put that in the form of a motion, I think that our treasurer is asking to postpone this item to a time certain to give time for the outreach committee to investigate another provider or two. Is that correct?
That is correct, because this was the actual understanding at the budget committee.
Okay. So, so I'm going to take that as a motion for Mr. Vlatman to postpone for 1 month, 2 months. How much?
Well, I do not know how long it will take for outreach committee to consult other providers.
Robin,
Are we even having a meeting next month?
We have meetings a couple times a week when we're getting together the newsletter, so that won't be a problem. I would be more than happy to interview as many people as you're comfortable with me interviewing.
How many internet providers are there?
there's a limit, just so everyone knows, there's a limited number to choose from. They're all have to
Yeah.
be vetted by the city. And there's a specific list that are allowed providers for neighborhood councils. Okay, so we'll call it a month then. So we're going to postpone this motion to a time certain. Is that your motion, Mr. Levatman?
Yes.
Yes, so we have a motion to postpone consideration of this item until the December board meeting. Does that motion have a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, second from Mr. Schlesinger. Is there discussion about the motion to postpone? Okay, hearing none, whoever has been talking in the background can go ahead and mute. Is there any objection to calling the question? Is there any objection to unanimous consent?
I'll abstain.
Okay, we have an abstention from Mr. Ringler, and
I'll abstain.
That was, give your name, Mr. Weinberg. Two abstentions, and I'm 3. And we have 23 people here on the board right now.
What time did John Lowe's come in?
26 people.
It's actually not 26 because Bradford is not here in capacity as a board member and Kathy is on here, so that makes it 24.
Also, Christie has 2 entries.
And Christie has 4. That's what's confusing me. Thank you. That makes it 23. Okay, so 23. So there's 20.
Yeah,
No worries.
I have 23.
Yeah, okay, 20 votes for 0 and 3 abstentions. Okay, thank you. So this motion is postponed with thanks to the committee for their willingness to explore another couple of bids. The next one is also a funding motion to recommend to renew the 10 pole banners that are installed on Beverly Glen from Tiffany Circle to Angelo Drive, and to approve the funding expenditure for permit processing, which is $250 plus taxes, which is $273.75. AAA flag and banner requires payment and a new council motion that approves the program to permit from February 2022 to February 2023 before ordering the permits. As I recall, we would have to work with Council District 5 to get those permits for the pole banners. So this is a motion from Outreach and made by Vice Chair Greenberg or Vice President Greenberg.
Correct. So I
Yes.
shall move and the committee moves.
Thank you. So do you want to say anything more about that, the motion, before we
No,
ask for questions?
Our banners have been up for multiples of years. Not every neighborhood council puts up banners. I know when I go into Tarzana has them up. We have them up. I don't know how many other neighborhood councils have them up. I love having them up because it goes to show you who we are in the neighborhood that we're in. And in order to get them renewed, we need to go through the city council and make a city council motion through our city council man. So that's the next step.
Great. Are there any questions regarding this motion? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for or against the motion?
I'll speak for it. It's very inexpensive advertising and can be seen by everybody who's driving or walking the streets.
Yeah, I speak for it too. I think it's a good idea, and it's 200 and something bucks for a lot of exposure, and
yeah,
you just do it.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? Seeing none, Is there anyone who objects to calling the question? Is there anyone who would like to abstain? And seeing none, it's just me with my usual abstention. Mr. Lowe's abstains. So we have Longcore and Lowe's are abstentions.
This is really a roll call vote. Is that okay?
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. It's a roll call vote. We have to call everybody's name.
Yeah.
Okay, Nikki, you want to do this
Okay.
one?
Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
do this one. Okay, we'll have to compare. Okay, Baranda's not here. Bayless, not here. Ellen,
Yes.
Dr. Garfield,
Yes.
Dr. Goodman, not here. Robin,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Christy Holmes,
Yes.
David Caden,
Yes.
Jacqueline Kennedy, Vadim,
Yes.
Travis,
Abstain.
abstain. Okay. Don Lowe's abstaining.
Where is he? How do you know he's abstaining?
He said it out loud. He said abstain.
No, Don Rose.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, so I didn't know.
Nikki Minor, yes. Wendy Morris.
Yes.
See, Patricia Murphy, is it here? Dan Palmer, Robert Ringler. Well,
He's waving yes.
I meant yes. I just didn't get my mute button off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I learned you can press the space bar.
Oh.
Oh.
Well, I'm a slow learner.
Heather Roy's alternate. Yeah.
Is Bobby Kwan? Yes.
Irene Sandler,
Yes.
Stephanie Savage. Hello,
Yes, yes.
Robert Schlesinger,
Yes.
Gail Stroloff,
Yes.
Tim Steele,
Yes.
Andre,
Yes.
Blair Tanner. She here? Not here. Kathy Wayne,
Yes.
Stephen Weinberg,
Yes.
John Wimbush,
Yes.
Stephen Prothro.
Yes.
All righty.
Thank you. The motion carries. We'll tally those up. So let's move on to item number 19, the report of the traffic committee. Irene, do you have a report?
Yes, we had a meeting, as most of you know, that was specially arranged by Travis with Metro to discuss our questions and their answers and explanations of where we are today with the Cross Mountain Valley to West LA or vice versa project. Unfortunately, we did not get as many answers as we had hoped. Compliments to those who asked very sophisticated questions. I really think the board did a great job, and as did Travis. But I believe we have to wait until we can really comment and ask questions starting on November the 30th and reaching into the new year. I don't have the paper with me right now to know exactly when it ends, but I think it ends close to February for our comment period. And so I believe that we will have a traffic committee meeting dedicated to the information that we get on the 30th. Hopefully we will get information. We also have a little dichotomy here, because we have major traffic problems on our canyon roads. Very serious accidents have been taking place. There's a flaunting of the rules and regulations, the laws that govern driving. And safety is a primary concern. Robert, you are our, I guess, our liaison to the LAPD. They must be awfully frustrated because they can't be everywhere at once. Would you have any advice for us other than the methods that we have tried in the past to get some of this under control?
Well, I wish I had, nothing has changed, Irene, unfortunately. In fact, the resources that we have for traffic enforcement, especially in the hillsides, we rely on motor officers because they can pull somebody over and not block traffic. But also it's very unsafe for them. And we only have 2 motor officers for West LA all the way to Pacific Palisades to the beach. So if you look at the 405 freeway, well, it starts a little bit before because it does cover Benedict Canyon, Beverly Glen, Roscommere, and Sepulveda. These are Cross Canyon feeders, and all the way to the beach. We have literally a freeway on Olympic. They could shoot radar all day and get tickets all day, but the problems are everywhere. And I think because now more people are driving, but they're not driving responsibly. It's too bad we can't mandate that everybody retake the driving test, and both written and the manual test, because I'm wondering, where did they get their license from? I'm sure everybody here is wondering the same thing. And it's citywide, the problem. We've had great luck with our commanding officer at West LA and also West Traffic Division. But all I can say is that just keep the complaints up, and when resources are available, we'll put them in place. Irene, do you have the traffic TS, the Community Traffic Service Union phone number? Because you can leave complaints on those.
Oh, maybe you can shoot me an email with that.
No, I'll just tell you now. And
Okay.
213, believe me, I know it by heart, 213-473-0215. And it's LAPD, West Traffic Division. So it's specific to the 5 geographical areas within the Bureau, but it covers West LA, our area. You have to be specific as to the kind of incidences and really call them on the more serious ones. You know, not California stop sign stops, because that's, you can't have a motor officer sitting on a stop sign all day waiting for somebody to go through a light. But there are other more serious, the donuts, the speeding, the upticks of accidents, and LADOT and West Traffic have accidents where there's been an injury, so they have statistics on that. And that is a great resource. And that's all I can think about. Ellen works with Hollywood. Do you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I was just going to recognize Mr. Levatman in case he has the number for the Hollywood division, since we do have two divisions associated. So David, I'm going to get to you in a second.
Well, actually, it's West Bureau Traffic covers Hollywood, Pacific.
Does it cover everything?
Yeah, it's 5 divisions. It's a bureau traffic.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Ellen?
We do have a traffic slow, who's Officer Mark Buck, and it in our area, it sometimes helps to call upon the traffic slow to enforce particular places. And I know Vadim probably has something to add.
Yeah.
It's
That's
hard to
another
hear you,
resource.
Ellen.
Yeah, that's another reason. We don't have a slow that covers West LA, which is actually 64 square miles.
Great. And Vadim, did you want to chime in here? And
Yeah, I just want to chime in that on the east side, we have the same issue. We have only 2 traffic officers covering a huge area. And one of the biggest problems, they stop working at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So from 4 until 7:38 in the morning, it's a wild west.
wow. Can we get David's comment first?
Sure. I hear these complaints in Benedict Canyon as well, even before the reduction in funding of LAPD. They've always said that because the canyons are typically less crime area, the LAPD assigns its assets to greater crime areas. And so it's a continuing problem. We're looking into license plate readers, the electronic signs that show, speed limit, 35 miles an hour and your speed is 60. There's no real simple answer for that, and it's just a continuing problem. So we are looking into it. And our new senior lead officer is James Allen for our area, and I have his email. I can circulate it if there's continuing problems areas. Sometimes people are doing donuts in general areas, racing in general areas. The problem if somebody sees a speeder or something, that the LAPD has to really see them and in order to issue a citation. But I can generate Officer Allen's, the senior lead officer for our area, which includes the neighborhood council area, if anybody would like it. Thank you.
It actually goes out on my crime report. It's 8 Adam 29. He is a senior lead officer for the entire area, which covers Westwood, Holmby, part of Bel Air, Beverly Crest, not the eastern portion. And Ellen has the slow for that. It's a problem. And you can put a lot of pressure on the consul offices, and it's more than just funding. I hate to tell you, David, but it's not nothing has changed in 15 years. Yeah, it's been a work in progress.
Ms. Minor, go ahead.
Yes, along with this, in Benedict Canyon and other places, there are these very loud noises which come, middle of the night and so forth, with cars with dual carburetors. And what strikes me is that years ago, they were made illegal, and cars who had dual carburetors were ticketed. And they were, forced to remove one and just have, one normal pipe. Well, now there are these really expensive cars that are made with dual carburetors, and they're the ones that race around at night and so forth. So, and also in the days in our residential streets and in the canyons. So I'm just wondering, Robert, whatever happened to that law against dual carburetors?
Well, it went out because fuel injection went in, Nikki. I hate to tell you, the dual carburetors are not.
No such thing.
No such thing. It's
Anymore.
actually,
Right.
and it's not on expensive cars. I know Travis will agree with me that even your neighborhood guy who visits the local market on a pickup truck, it's no muffler.
Mufflers, whatever it is, dual pipes.
Well, it's not even a dual pipe. It's the fact that they have a way when they take their foot off the gas, it backfires. Just to be, and we had the same problem trying to enforce it on motorcycles. We got very little traction because it's very difficult to get the motor officer that can read the sound pressure of the noise coming out of the exhaust to be able to give a citation. And it's just an infraction. All they have to do is replace it. And then as soon as they get that replaced, they take it off and put the old one back.
So,
It's not just in the canyon, but it's, I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's all over the city right now. Everybody seems to.
All over the city.
I did want to mention one thing that in response to Benedict Canyon's ideas of having the signage and the speed limit signs, and if cars are going over it, they will see that. These can't be put up by neighborhoods. They have to go through the West Bureau Traffic office, because otherwise you can imagine what would be happening. But I think that one of the things that I understand neighborhoods are doing is that they're hiring their own security. And I'm wondering how is that interacting with traffic, as any neighborhood that anyone here is representing getting their own security for the streets in the area?
It's not
I
enforceable.
can address it.
Yeah, let's hold on. So Vadim and then Ellen.
What we're talking about is modified exhaust. And we definitely have laws on the books and very expensive ticket. I think it's $1,000 if you exceed 950 decibels. The problem is motor officers need specialized equipment to measure this. LAPD does not have that. The only law enforcement agency that does have is a CHP, and I tried to get CHP to enforce this, and they're giving me a runaround. So they're not even doing that as well. So we are kind of stuck with this exhaust, modified exhaust. As far as the private security, well, private security is just private security. They cannot issue any kind of a citation. They cannot pull people over. The only thing that they can do is report the crime. That's it. That's their power. They're not peace officers.
Thank you. And Ellen, let me
just
give you the last word on
same
this, and then
thing.
we can move on. Yeah.
Private security, little or no effect on
Great.
traffic.
Well, thank you. So it seems like there's a lot of enthusiasm and engagement with the traffic committee. Get your ideas to the traffic committee for actions to take that we can operationalize that will help solve this. I know we have heard in the past from residents of Beverly Glen, which was had a proposal to do some traffic calming design, physical design, bump outs and, medians and whatnot that wouldn't require enforcement to work. It would sort of control speed through road design. But I hope everyone takes their best ideas to the traffic committee, along with engaging in the metro scoping process, starting, of course, extending over the holidays from November 30th to February 11th. And so we'll look forward to more discussions on that. And thank you, Irene. Let's move on to item 20, the report of Ad hoc Committee on Home Sharing and Party House Ordinances. Chair is Ellen Evans.
So the committee met this month, and we are revising our #1 bestseller, the Party House Handbook, and working on ways to promote party house enforcement, which has been really challenging because the parties are really in full swing, at least in our neck of the woods, and LAPD is quite understaffed, although we've heard that there's going to be some relief maybe early in the new year for that. So yeah, and then should I just move right into the motion?
Yeah, so we have some slots open on, I didn't actually check, I'm just assuming.
Okay, all right, so here's the deal. So, we need to have at least as many board members as non-board members. So Robin's been attending. So I think we'd like to add her. I think Vadim didn't answer the email, but Vadim, can we add you to the committee? Because I know that it dovetails with what he does with the police very nicely, maybe.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna, and then Bobby Kwan actually wasn't added last time because we didn't have enough board members, but now we have enough board members. So now the motion is to add Robin, Vadim, and Bobby Kwan.
Right, so it's a motion to nominate by Ellen Evans, Robin, Vadim, and Bobby, so Greenberg, Levatman, and Kwan, to the Ad hoc Committee on Home Sharing and Party Houses. So the board then can vote up or down on that. Is there anyone who would be opposed to this? Okay, that helps. So seeing no opposition, we can vote by acclamation, which is that we all support it. And congratulations. We'll add you all to the list.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stella, I do not believe is present tonight. So item 22, we're going to hold. I can report though, since I sat in on the meeting, We passed a motion from the LADBS committee regarding the measurement of substandard streets and the need to have a process to update that so that entitlements were not given inappropriately. And that was passed and conveyed. We had a meeting with CD4 to explain that position. It's with CD5 as well. CD4 seems interested and as well interested in a pipeline of motions about improving the quality of service from LADBS in terms of following the rules. And so there's progress going on there with the action that you all approved at the last meeting that I can let you know about. I can also update you on item number 23, the report of the Ad Hoc Committee on Redistricting. We haven't met yet. All of us have been following along. Since we last, it's been like a lifetime since we last met, but here's what I think has happened. The Redistricting Commission sent its recommendation to the City Council. And that included basically our recommendation to split between CD4 and CD5 at Briarcrest. The City Council president decided she wasn't particularly in favor of the map and created an ad hoc committee on redistricting. It was referred there. That committee voted to adopt a different map that moved the boundary back to the current CD4, CD5 boundary. And changed things in the valley. This is mostly, I believe, to change some the orientation in the valley. It turned CD4 into more of a hillside district that extends out toward Northridge, as opposed to a cross valley district going to the north that had come out of the Redistricting Commission. So that happened. Following that, we all noticed what was going on and mobilized, and many of you heard via our either a board email or the email to constituents that we wanted to see if we could make the change back to what we had recommended. So the border was Briarcrest, that Franklin and Coldwater would go into CD5 and everything to the east would go to CD4 like we had recommended. You responded, our stakeholder groups to homeowners associations responded, and we played a little bit of an intermediate role. I was talking to people and Wendy was talking to some people in CD5, and I was talking to people in CD4, and we kind of played enough telephone to let them know that neither office was going to object to this. And in fact, they would both support it. And the day that it would have to go in, they did talk to each other, and Councilmember Rahman put in a motion. Oh, we also did the analysis that this wouldn't affect the deviance in the map. There's only 2,500 people. It would actually improve the map from a Voting Rights Act perspective of evenness. Councilmember Rahman put in the motion to City Council to move Franklin Coldwater over to Briarcrest into CD5, and the council approved it. It wasn't unanimous, but one council member voted no on everything. So nothing was unanimous. And that they then approved that map, and it is currently out for a public hearing. So there is now a draft map that follows the advice that we gave, and that improves, I believe everyone agrees that it improves CD4 as well. From our perspective, at least my personal perspective, it did. And there will be another public hearing, I believe on the 26th of November. And then on December 1st, the City Council will vote on the map. I believe, since both council members agreed to this shift and the council already voted for it, that there's a very low probability that our good work gets undone. However, I don't believe in celebrating yet. We can all have a look and see what happens on December 1st. And really, it was interesting because Mehmet Berker from CD4 was at the Hillside Federation meeting last night, and he acknowledged one of the things that they had accomplished was in fact this switch. And he thanked us for bringing it to them, because that allows them to focus on fewer number of districts within the city's other units. The sort of public safety difference, not having to deal with another, the West Bureau of Police, actually he was looking at as an advantage. And so they really believed in CD4 that this is to their advantage. CD5 believes it's to their advantage. And I have to credit also from the very beginning, Ellen stalwartly supporting the idea that would in fact be an advantage to have two council members representing us, and having that discussion and coming to the conclusions that we did as a council. All that is just a long soliloquy by way of saying, thank you, you all did good, we did good, and I think it's an outcome that everyone will be happy with, if it holds. And I'm, you know, as optimistic as a pessimist can be, that it will. Are there any questions about that?
Thank you, Travis, for your leadership.
Thank you, Travis.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, we made some new friends along the way, in the different areas who really stepped up. Ellen, go ahead.
Well played, Dr. Longcore. May I make a remark on other redistricting efforts?
Oh, sure. Yeah, because we've really focused on the city.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just want everybody to know that the current drafts of the assembly maps and the congressional maps are quite different than what we have now. And every stakeholder group should be looking at those maps like tonight or tomorrow, because the hearings about them are going on for the next few days. Like, for example, nobody's in Ted Lieu's district anymore. So I think these things are going to change, but just go look and be part of the process, please.
Yep. So I think, you know, as a city advisory group, we've focused on the city, but yes, absolutely. I looked at some of the congressional maps and just started scratching my head, what they were thinking. So,
and if anybody needs the links or anything, just email me.
you know what, I think it would be appropriate if you would be willing to send an email to board at BABCNC and just give those links so that everybody has them and can bring them to their stakeholder groups.
Good thing.
Thank you. Appreciate that. New business. We're getting there. Item number 24, establishment of a deputy chair position. So let me just give a little bit of background. This actually was voted on by the executive committee to put on the agenda as discussing sort of operations in general. The idea behind this, and I have to thank Irene for really pushing this point forward, is that we have a lot of people who are very engaged, who are serving on our committees, but can't serve in leadership roles currently because those need to be members of the board. And we have a lot of talent there of people who'd like to contribute. And so we've got chair and vice chair, but because they need to be able to present to the board on behalf of the committee, they need to be board members. And so we had a long discussion of this, and kind of had the brainstorm that we could have something that we add to our standing rules, which would be called a deputy chair. And a deputy chair would not be required to be a board member. Could be, but wouldn't have to be. Just anybody who's on the committee who would be willing to assist the chair with the operations of the committee. And this intent there is to involve stakeholders in committee leadership, take advantage of the interest and expertise of stakeholders not currently serving on the board, and that these chairs would be elected in the same manner as the chair and vice chair position through nomination by the president and election by the board. So for example, I would talk to Irene and say, if you want a deputy chair, who would you like? And that's not how that works. It's not nominated. The chairs are nominated by the board. That is right. The members are nominated by the committee. And then we would nominate and elect those deputy chairs. And I can think of a number of, you could have more than one, especially if there's geographic issues, say around public safety, or if there's topic differences, just to recognize people and give and spread responsibility. And also, I think, as a bit of a feeder for people who intend to run for the board for a position at some point, so that they would be able, folks who are engaged, be able to say, I've served as a deputy chair in my role as a community stakeholder on this committee, and now I'd like to run for the board. So that's the logic. Is there anyone, and it's a motion from executive committee. I'd like somebody to move it for me though, if that'd be okay.
I'll move.
Thank you. Move by
Second.
Evans. I have a second.
I second.
Thank you, Wayne. Is there any discussion of that idea? It would become a standing rule. Okay, I've talked you into submission.
Yeah, I can say something about it. I think there are other committees that need a deputy chair because of the work that's involved. For certainly land use, I think Stephanie would agree. that we could use a deputy as well. And I think there are other committees that would feel the same way.
And yeah, my view is the more people are engaged with responsibility, the better we are as a whole.
Right.
Yep. Okay. Is there any objection to calling the question then? Hearing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent?
Nope.
Accepting the chair of the meeting who doesn't vote, except when needed. Item number 25, and thank you, Ellen, for bringing this to our attention. It's a section 245 motion for City Council to hear an appeal of a project at 627 North Carasoni Road. Discussion and possible motion to support. We would support that that appeal. It's a council file. We would file a CIS. I should have said, yeah, file a CIS. And it's both of these, I believe, were motions by Koretz with seconds and sometimes thirds. This and the next. And so is there anyone who would like to speak to this item? Is anyone familiar with the project? Kathy
Yeah,
Wayne, go ahead.
I appraised both of those properties. They are actually adjoining. And they are massive sized properties with houses that are 25,000 square feet plus, and guest houses that are over 10,000 square feet. So what is going on? I don't know how much more they can build because they're massive already. So just so everybody's aware that this is
right. And
these
so
are
what
huge properties.
Yeah, and so what these motions are is the city council is asserting jurisdiction. If the motion passes through the city council, they would assert jurisdiction over the determinations that have been made in the planning department and planning committee, wherever it's been. And then the council itself would vote on these projects. And of course, that would allow another round of hearings for people, neighbors, affected parties, et cetera, to testify on them. That's clear. Any other questions or comments?
Good idea.
Is this the standard over 17,000 square foot loophole thing?
I don't believe so.
No.
No, this is a set, 245 motions can be, I think, made on any property that the city council would like to assert jurisdiction over. And these
On
would
any
have,
property at the moment.
yeah.
There are a lot of rules, Wendy, if you're over 17,500 square feet as far as EIRs and everything else are concerned, but I agree with Travis. I don't believe this.
I don't think this is.
Extends to city council determination that often.
Great. Mr. Weinberg, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm kind of new to this, and this seems like a really important power that we would have to refer something like this to city council. And I'm wondering how this sort of thing didn't happen with regard to Mohammed Hadid and what he's done in Franklin Canyon and the two massive projects he has there. They're both over 75,000 square feet as set forth in the plans that we've obtained. And they're basically hotel sized properties. It's just absolutely obscene. So I'm just, wondering, I'm looking ahead to the future as to how we prevent something like that from happening again.
Right. I have a feeling that Mr. Hall might be able to walk us through the intricacies of this.
Yeah. And also, one more thing to add to Stephen's comment. How does the city allow these monstrosities to be built on spec? I mean, I think the first thing should be, if they want to build these ginormous, like the one, Niall Niami's 100,000 square foot home on spec, how does the city allow them to build these things without owner building, because they sit, they don't sell. So that's just my addition to the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I add one more thing and to follow up on Gail?
Okay.
The project at Cedarbrook is about a quarter of the way finished, and it's and Hadid has now gone into bankruptcy. So we've got this huge, massive mess on this hill. Probably will never get cleaned up. And so I kind of agree with Gail's comment is that there should be bonding. There should be some sort of completion requirement when somebody proposes houses this large on spec. I'm just kind of voicing some of these issues that have occurred in my neighborhood, and I don't know if there's any solutions to them, and I just want to just.
There's another one. and
Okay,
that's
but hold on.
Rebecca.
Yeah, we let's get an explanation here from Jamie on the
Sure.
section 245 and who
So,
has that
first
power.
of all, section 245 is in the city charter. And it's a unique procedure that is rarely used. It's used only a handful of times each year by the council members, and it's reserved for only certain things. And to answer, I'll answer Steve's question in just a second, but basically it allows the council to assert jurisdiction over certain actions of boards of commissioners. And in this case, it was, I believe, the Area Planning Commission, or is it a CPC? I can't remember. It's either the CPC or the APC that they're asserting jurisdiction over. And so the council has to take action within 5 council meeting days of that action. And basically, once a 245 motion is made, the council has to assert jurisdiction by a 2/3 vote. And then they can either veto the action of the APC or the CPC. And sometimes that's all they can do is just veto. But when it comes to these planning actions, they can both veto the action and then actually step in the shoes of the APC or the CPC and make an alternative decision. This is rarely used. It's a safeguard that was put into the city charter when it was adopted in 2000 to basically allow the elected decision makers correct an error that may have occurred and a non-elected board. Now, Stephen, the reason why it didn't work for Hadid, and I know this is everyone's nightmare, it's that whole by right project. If it's a by right project, then you never go to APC, you never go to CPC, and therefore you can never have a section 245 motion. The by right projects are the hardest things that we fight. And that's the gold standard for all developers, is to create a by right project.
Thank you. I learn something every meeting. So would we like to, I don't think it's too late. This was late breaking. We put it on the agenda. I'm assuming it's still relevant. Have they had 5 meetings or not? Do you know, have you followed up on this one? I don't think it hurts us to take this position, and we'll just file just so that people know that there is support for doing these things when it's appropriate.
One of the last uses of it that we know of in our that I recall in our area was a councilman using 245 to overturn a commission's denial and therefore help the developer. So it works both ways sometimes.
True
Although it was there, as Jamie says, to protect against abuses, it sometimes works in reverse.
Thank you. Ellen?
I'll just note that the underlying decision by the Planning Commission that was overturned by this had to do with the appeal of permits by the Bel Air Association.
Great. Jamie?
I'm going to say one other thing here. There was a 245 motion that was made by Councilman Rue against a gigantic project that was kind of straddles Laurel Canyon and DSPNA, the project on Blue Heights. And that was a situation where we had appealed it to the APC, and the APC denied our appeal. And then Councilman Rue asserted jurisdiction, the council asserted jurisdiction. And the other thing is just kind of following on what Don said, this 245 motion actually has been abused. And Councilman Weezar, I'll give you an example of how he was able to do it. He was able to bring a 245 motion. And then because he was in the driver's seat, he was able to actually grant additional incentives and additional goodies. So he actually gave them more than what they got at the APC. And we know he wasn't doing that out of the goodness of his heart nowadays.
This is part of the 20% of our city council that's indicted. Yes.
And I just want to, and there have been proposals to reform it and to actually remove 245. And I'm actually not in support of that. I think that would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's been abused, but it doesn't mean that we need to actually get rid of the safeguard. But that's all I'll say.
Ms. Minor?
At the dovetail on what Jamie said, yes. So at certain times it has been abused, but it's a valuable tool, and the movement afoot to get rid of the two, I believe to be a big mistake. And one of the so-called abused use of it, if you delved further into the reason that a 245 was placed on this particular property that everybody thinks was the abuse, it actually wasn't, if you get really into the whole situation. So sometimes some of these things are thought of as abuse and they're not, and sometimes they are abuse, but all in all, 245 is a very valuable tool. It should not be gotten rid of, and looks to be, in these cases, it's a good idea.
Great. Is there anyone who wants to speak against this motion? So seeing none, is there any objection to calling the question? Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Save the chair. Okay, seeing none, motion passes. Would anyone like to move item 26, which is the second of these 245 motion items?
So moved.
I'll
Moved from
second.
Minor, second by Wayne. Stephen, is that to second or to speak on this one?
Yeah, it was just a second.
Thank you, appreciate that.
I was never good on Jeopardy.
Thank you. Does anyone wants to discuss this item? We've kind of discussed it already. And any objection to calling the question? Any objection to unanimous consent? We have 21 people present, so there'll be a 24 and 1 abstention. I'm not voting. Okay, so that motion will pass as well unless I hear somebody say otherwise. That brings us to item number 27, which is good of the order. It's 8:51. This is a light evening, especially compared to some of the marathons we've had in our past couple of months, which I greatly appreciate everyone's stamina for. Does anyone have anything to share that's not been on the agenda, but they would like to comment this for the good of our community and the good of our camaraderie? Robin Greenberg.
Larry Lyston called me this week, and he called me from the hospital. He had 2 operations in his life within a couple of weeks. One is his broken clavicle, and one is his spine. So as I understand it, he's completed them and would maybe be allowed to go home shortly.
I'm glad that he's at least on the underside of those. Yep. Anyone else?
Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy.
That's what I was just gonna say. That's what I was gonna say.
Yep.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, so it'll be a while before we see each other again. We do have a meeting on the 22nd of December, unless there's so few items that we, can cancel. But we'll keep it there and open because, the government doesn't actually sleep.
Oh, yes.
Always,
Time.
well, they still try to slip things through. That's the problem.
They're comatose, but they don't sleep.
Exactly.
And
All
thank
right,
you
everybody.
everyone for all you do.
Yes, thank you. So the meeting officially is adjourned. You can stay on and chit chat if you want, but we're done with the meeting. We're going to stop the recording.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.